They gave my brother everything. $50 million wired to his account in a single transfer, a gleaming new Tesla delivered with a red ribbon tied across the hood, and a sprawling mansion with fountains and marble floors waiting just for him. Everyone clapped, cheered, and congratulated him as though the universe itself had decided he was the chosen one, the golden child. I stood there in the background, barely noticed, my smile forced, my hands clasped together in awkward silence. Nobody cared what I thought, nobody asked how I felt. It was his day, his spotlight, his crown of glory. But what if I told you that on that very same day, while cameras flashed for him and champagne glasses clinked in his honor, a stranger quietly walked toward me, pressed an envelope into my hand, and whispered words that changed everything. Before I open that envelope for you, before I reveal what was inside and how it flipped my life upside down, let me say this: you are not here by accident. You clicked on this story for a reason, and what you're about to hear may just remind you that life has a way of humbling the proud and lifting the forgotten. So please, before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because here at Swift Revenge, every story is more than just entertainment, it's a lesson, a reminder that fate has its own mysterious justice. The envelope in my hand felt heavier than its size. It was slim, sealed neatly, and yet when the stranger placed it in my palm, it carried a kind of weight that I couldn't explain. My brother was surrounded by reporters, his smile wide as he waved for photographs in front of the Tesla parked elegantly in the driveway of his new mansion. People kept telling him, "You deserve this, you've always been destined for greatness." And maybe that was true. He had always been the favorite. The one who got better grades, the one teachers adored, the one who somehow always had opportunities fall neatly into his lap while I stumbled through life with bruises no one noticed. Growing up, my parents compared us endlessly. "Why can't you be more like your brother? Look at him, polished, brilliant, responsible." I became used to the shadow, to the invisible corner where my existence barely mattered. That day, while they toasted to his new beginning, I stood at the edge of the celebration wondering if I would ever matter to anyone. But then came that moment, the moment the stranger approached. He wasn't dressed like the guests who came to admire my brother's new estate. He wore a simple dark jacket, his shoes scuffed, his face marked with lines of someone who had lived through storms of his own. He didn't smile when he handed me the envelope. He only said, "It's your turn now. Don't waste it." My heart stuttered as I clutched it, trying to ask what he meant, but he was gone before I could utter a single word. Nobody noticed him, just as nobody noticed me, and that's when the irony cut deepest. While all eyes shone on my brother, I had been handed something unseen, something secret, something meant only for me. I could have slipped that envelope into my pocket and ignored it, afraid of what it might hold, but something inside me, something that had been starving for recognition, for purpose, burned with curiosity. My fingers trembled as I tore it open later that night, away from the noise, away from the grandeur. Inside was a single folded letter and a key. The letter was handwritten, the ink slightly smudged, the words deliberate. It read, "Your life has been overlooked, but your path is far greater than you know. This key unlocks a door not just to a place, but to the truth about who you are. Tomorrow at sunrise, take the key and find the old library at Rosewood Lane. The rest will reveal itself." I stared at the letter, my chest rising and falling in uneven breaths. A key? A library? Truth about who I was? For years, I had believed my story was nothing more than the backdrop to my brother's shining portrait. But that night, with the letter in hand, something shifted. I couldn't sleep. My brother celebrated downstairs, laughter spilling across marble floors, while I lay awake staring at the key under my pillow. By the time the horizon blushed with dawn, I was already walking toward Rosewood Lane, clutching the key as though it were the first real gift destiny had ever given me. The morning air was sharp, carrying the kind of chill that wakes every nerve in your body. I walked with the key clenched in my palm so tightly that the grooves left faint marks in my skin. Rosewood Lane wasn't a street people talked about often, it was old, forgotten, almost swallowed by the newer developments around the city. The houses there had faded paint, overgrown gardens, and porches that creaked under the weight of time. At the very end of the lane stood a building I recognized faintly from childhood whispers, an abandoned library, boarded up, its windows coated with dust and memories. As I approached, I noticed something strange. The massive iron gate that usually stayed chained had been left slightly ajar, as though someone knew I was coming. My heart beat faster. For years, I had followed paths carved out for me by others, parents who told me I wasn't good enough, teachers who overlooked me, and a society that applauded my brother while ignoring my silent battles. But now, for the first time, I was walking down a path that felt like mine alone. The heavy oak door of the library groaned when I pushed it, and the key in my hand slid perfectly into the lock. The click of it unlocking echoed through the empty halls like thunder in a canyon. Inside, dust swirled in golden beams of light cutting through cracked windows. The air smelled of old paper, leather, and secrets. My footsteps echoed as I walked past rows of broken shelves, until finally I saw it, a single wooden table in the center, with a leather-bound journal waiting as though someone had placed it there just hours before. My hands shook as I opened it, and what I read inside almost dropped me to my knees. The journal wasn't filled with random words, it was filled with my name. Page after page, written by someone who seemed to know every moment of my life. The day I scraped my knee at 5 years old and hid it so my mother wouldn't scold me. The time I failed my math exam in 7th grade and cried quietly in bed. The afternoon I sat alone at graduation while everyone else posed with families who were proud. These weren't things anyone could have known unless they had been watching me, following me, caring enough to write them down when nobody else did. My breath quickened as I flipped page after page. At the very end, scrawled in darker ink, were words that stopped me cold. You are not who you think you are. The family you serve as a shadow is not the family bound to your blood. Everything you've been denied was never theirs to give. Follow the map tucked at the back of this journal, and you will find what was stolen from you. My chest tightened, tears stinging my eyes. Stolen? Not who I thought I was? For years, I had believed I was just the overlooked sibling, the one fated to remain in the dark while my brother basked in light. But now it seemed my entire existence was built on lies. At the back of the journal, folded neatly, was indeed a map. Old, yellowed, marked with strange symbols. I didn't know if I was ready to follow it, didn't know if I had the strength. But then I remembered the stranger's words, "It's your turn now. Don't waste it." And in that moment, standing in that forgotten library with dust in my lungs and a secret in my hand, I knew there was no turning back. My brother could have his millions, his Tesla, his mansion. Whatever this was, it was mine, and maybe, just maybe, it was worth more than all of it. I stood there for a long time in that ruined library, clutching the map as though it were the only anchor I had in a world that suddenly felt unrecognizable. The silence around me was heavy, but beneath it I could feel a strange hum, as if the walls themselves carried whispers of truths that had been waiting for me. My hands trembled as I unfolded the map fully, its edges frayed, ink faded but still clear enough to guide me. The markings didn't point to anywhere familiar, not the neighborhood, not the city, not even a place I had read about in books. Instead, it showed a winding route, symbols etched in corners, and one distinct mark, a red X at what looked like the edge of a forest, far from the place I had called home all my life. For a moment, I wanted to fold it back and leave it there. I wanted to convince myself that none of this was real, that it was just a prank played by someone cruel. But then I thought about all the years I had wasted living as if I were invisible, of every time I sat in the shadows. While my brother's name lit up newspapers, while my parents showered him with praise that they never spared even a fraction of for me. The memory burned like fire in my chest. No, this was real. It had to be. It was the only explanation for the emptiness that had followed me my entire life. So I left the library with the journal tucked under my arm, the map hidden against my chest, and I walked back down Rosewood Lane as though each step were carrying me out of one life and into another. The days that followed felt like walking through a dream. I could barely sit at the dinner table with my parents and my brother without hearing the journal's words repeating in my head, "You are not who you think you are. The family you serve as a shadow is not the family bound to your blood." I looked at my mother's face, so cold, always calculating. I looked at my father's eyes, sharp, distant, more invested in stocks and reputation than in the child sitting across from him. And then my brother, smiling smugly as he recounted his latest investment wins, his voice dripping with the confidence of someone who had never once been told he wasn't enough. I wanted to scream, to tell them all what I had discovered, but a strange instinct told me to keep silent. This was my secret now, my power, and I wasn't going to hand it over to the very people who had built their lives on keeping me small. At night, when the house grew quiet, I would sit by the window with a flashlight and trace the map with my fingers. Every curve of the line, every faded symbol, seemed to vibrate with meaning I hadn't yet unlocked. And then one night, unable to resist the pull any longer, I packed a small bag, tucked the journal into it, and slipped out before dawn, walking toward the forest that waited like a dark mouth at the edge of the horizon. The journey wasn't easy. The path twisted through narrow roads, fields that seemed to stretch endlessly, and finally into dense woods where the light barely touched the ground. I walked until my legs ached, following the map as though it were a lifeline. Hours blurred into days, and more than once I considered turning back. But then I would remember the stranger's voice, soft yet commanding, "It's your turn now." The deeper I went, the more I felt like something was guiding me, not just the map, but a force, a presence that seemed to whisper in the rustling of the leaves, in the crackling of twigs beneath my feet. At last, I reached the place marked by the red X. It wasn't what I expected. No grand treasure, no hidden temple. Instead, it was a clearing, silent and still, with a single stone in the center. The stone was tall, weathered, and carved with words in a language I couldn't understand. My heart pounded as I approached it, running my fingers along the grooves of the carvings. For a moment, nothing happened. But then, suddenly, the ground beneath me seemed to shudder, as though the earth itself had taken a breath. The air grew thick, heavy, and the silence shattered with a sound like 1,000 whispers rising all at once. My knees buckled, and I dropped to the ground as images flashed before my eyes, as memories, but not mine. A baby being carried away in the dead of night. A woman crying out, her arms reaching for something stolen from her. A man signing papers in shadows, exchanging wealth for silence. I gasped, clutching my head as the visions poured into me, flooding me with truths I hadn't asked for but could no longer deny. And then, just as suddenly, it stopped. The forest fell quiet again. My body shook, my chest heaved, and my entire soul seemed to scream with one realization that now thundered inside me: I had been stolen. I was not my parents' child. I was not my brother's sibling. My life had been built on lies, and the people I had trusted, people I had loved, were the very thieves who had stolen me from the life that should have been mine. The night I returned from the forest, my entire body felt different, as though the very weight of my bones had shifted under the burden of truth. I wasn't the same person who had left home days earlier, clutching a fragile map and a bundle of unanswered questions. I was carrying the knowledge of a stolen life, of betrayal deeper than anything I could have imagined. My parents, no, not my parents, the people I had been forced to call mother and father, had stolen me, hidden me, raised me not out of love but out of selfishness and greed. And my so-called brother, the golden child, the heir to everything, they had molded him into their pride while shaping me into nothing more than a servant in my own home. That realization burned so fiercely in me that it felt like fire would pour from my chest if I didn't hold it in. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of being invisible. No, I wanted to be seen. I wanted the truth to shatter their perfect little glass castle and leave them exposed for what they really were. But fate wasn't done with me yet. The day after I returned, an envelope arrived at the house. My brother was lounging on the sofa, bragging about some new investment in real estate, while my parents listened as if every word he spoke was gospel. The butler, yes, we had a butler, though I was treated more like one than he was, brought in the mail, and on the top of the stack was a single white envelope. No stamp. No return address. Just my name, written in firm, deliberate handwriting. My heart clenched the moment I saw it. I reached for it, but my father snatched it up first. Strange, he muttered, eyes narrowing, who would send you anything? The disdain in his voice was sharp enough to cut. My mother smirked, already dismissing it. Probably nothing. A mistake. My brother laughed, shaking his head. Maybe a flyer for some minimum wage job. They laughed at me in unison, their voices filling the room with the sound I had known my whole life, mockery. But when my father tore open the envelope, the laughter stopped. His face drained of color, his lips parted as though he had been struck. He read the letter once, twice, then a third time, his hands trembling. My mother snatched it from him, her eyes darting across the page. She gasped, covered her mouth, and for the first time in my life, I saw fear in her eyes. Pure, unshakable fear. My brother leaned forward, impatient, grabbing the letter. When he read it, his smirk vanished, replaced by confusion that quickly melted into rage. This is a lie, he shouted. But I knew. I knew it wasn't. The letter was short but powerful. It revealed everything, the deal made in secret, the night I had been stolen, the identity of my real family. It named names, places, dates. It was undeniable. And at the end, one line cut through it all: the time of shadows is over. The true heir has returned. I felt every hair on my body rise as the words settled into me. My parents, no, my captors, stared at me as though seeing me for the first time. My father tried to speak, but his words stumbled, broken. My mother reached for me, as though some desperate maternal instinct had suddenly awakened, but I stepped back. I didn't need their touch. I didn't need their approval. For the first time, I felt taller than them, stronger than them. My brother tried to laugh it off, tried to hurl insults, but his voice cracked, and his eyes darted with the paranoia of a man whose throne was crumbling beneath him. That night, the house was heavy with silence, each of them trapped in their own thoughts while I sat in my room with the letter, staring at the handwriting of the stranger who had given me back my life. The days that followed were chaos. News spread faster than I could have imagined. The name of my real family, a name buried for decades, surfaced like a storm. They were powerful, wealthier than even the fortune my so-called brother had been gifted. They were respected, revered, their legacy stretching across continents. And I was their blood. Their lost child. When representatives from their estate arrived at our home, dressed in black suits, their presence filled the room with an authority my parents had never commanded. My father tried to argue, tried to threaten legal action, but they silenced him with evidence, documents, recordings, signatures. My mother wept, trying to plead, but her tears fell on deaf ears. My brother screamed about his inheritance, about how he was the chosen one, but no one cared. The truth had spoken, and it had spoken for me. The mansion they once flaunted as proof of their status was revealed to be built on lies. The Tesla, the 50 million, all the luxuries showered upon my brother, it was nothing compared to the empire that now reached out its hand to me. For once, I wasn't the forgotten child. I wasn't the shadow. I was the center, the rightful heir, and I could see the terror in their eyes as they realized everything they had stolen was slipping away. But the most powerful moment didn't come from the wealth, the mansions, or the influence suddenly within my grasp. It came from the reunion. When I stood face to face with my real family, when I saw the tears in their eyes, when I felt their arms around me, it was a healing I hadn't known I needed. My real mother's embrace, warm and trembling, felt like the missing piece of a puzzle finally clicking into place. My real father's hand on my shoulder, firm and proud, was a weight I had been waiting for my whole life. They didn't see me as a burden, as a maid, as a mistake. They saw me as their child. And in that moment, every scar, every wound from the years of neglect and humiliation, began to fade. Not disappear, but soften, replaced by something stronger, belonging. And as I stood there, the stranger's words echoed in my mind again. It's your turn now. Only now did I truly understand. It wasn't just about wealth or revenge. It was about stepping into the life that had been denied to me, about carrying forward a legacy that was rightfully mine. But I also knew this wasn't the end. No, this was just the beginning. Because while my brother sulked in the ruins of his stolen throne, while my fake parents tried to cling to the shreds of their crumbling empire, I was rising. And as I looked out from the balcony of my real home, the city stretching wide beneath me, I whispered a silent promise, not to them, not even to myself, but to the life that had been stolen and returned. I will not waste this second chance. I will rise so high they will never again look down on me. I will become the shadow that swallowed the light, and the light that blinded the shadows. This is my story. And it has only just begun.